Tonight, I want you to pause for a moment, not to strain, not to force belief, but simply to listen. Because there is a quiet truth moving through the universe right now, and it is this: God funds millions tonight, not tomorrow, not someday when you are ready. Tonight. Most people think money comes from effort alone, from worry, from pushing and struggling. But divine supply has never answered anxiety. It answers alignment. It answers faith spoken into motion. God is not limited by banks, bosses, markets, or timing. God is the source behind every channel, and when the source speaks, channels rearrange themselves. You were never meant to live under pressure. You were meant to live under provision. There is an invisible law working on your behalf, and it responds to the words you agree with. When you say, "There is not enough," life echoes scarcity. When you say, "I don't know how," doors pause. But when you say, quietly, calmly, confidently, "God is my unfailing supply," the universe must reorganize itself to match that declaration. Faith is not loud desperation. Faith is calm certainty. Tonight, abundance is not being created for you. It already exists. The money you need is already here. The opportunities are already prepared. The help is already assigned. What changes everything is your inner agreement. God does not need your struggle. God needs your consent, and consent begins with expectancy. Expectancy is not wishing. It is knowing. It is the settled feeling that something good is inevitable. When you expect divine funding, you stop chasing money, and money begins chasing alignment. You stop begging, and you start receiving. You stop explaining your lack, and you start declaring your supply. Say it within yourself now: I am divinely funded, not because of your past, not because of your qualifications, not because you earned it the hard way, but because divine order supports divine purpose, and you are not here by accident. If you are alive, you are funded. If you are breathing, you are backed by heaven. There are people listening right now who have been faithful, generous in spirit, kind even when resources felt tight. You wondered if God noticed. You wondered if your patience mattered. Hear this clearly. Nothing is lost in divine accounting. What looked delayed was being multiplied. What looked withheld was being redirected. God does not pay small. God pays in overflow. Tonight, unexpected channels open. Money comes through ways you did not plan. Ideas arrive that carry profit within them. Debts dissolve not through struggle, but through surprising ease. This is not fantasy, it is law. When thought changes, experience follows. Do not tell God how it must happen. That is the fastest way to limit a miracle. Simply state the truth and step aside. Say, "Infinite intelligence now reveals the perfect way," and then allow. Allowing is the highest form of faith. Some of you have been trying to deserve abundance. Let that go. You do not deserve sunlight. It shines because it is its nature. In the same way, supply flows because God is supply. When you stop arguing with that truth, it becomes personal experience. Tonight is not about forcing belief. It is about releasing resistance. If fear speaks, do not wrestle it. Replace it. Speak a higher word. Fear dissolves when truth is spoken calmly. Say, "God's riches now appear in my world in expected and unexpected ways," and feel the relief of that statement. Relief is a sign you are aligned. You may not see evidence yet, but evidence always follows agreement. Remember this: money is not your master. It is your servant. It responds to consciousness. When your consciousness rests in trust, money moves with ease. When your mind relaxes, supply accelerates. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not forgotten. Tonight, divine order corrects everything. Lost opportunities return in new form. Missed chances reappear with greater reward. What was taken is restored with interest. God does not subtract. God replaces with increase. Let gratitude rise now. not for what you see, but for what you know is done. Gratitude is the final seal of faith. It says, I trust the law more than appearances, and appearances must obey the law. As you move into this night, sleep in expectancy. Do not rehearse worries. Do not plan lack. Let your last thought be this: God funds me freely, fully, and faithfully. Because divine funding is not random, it is ordered. It is not rare, it is natural. It is not distant, it is present. And tonight, as surely as the sun will rise, God funds millions, and you are included. Most people spend their entire lives negotiating with channels, jobs, salaries, clients, systems, people in power, believing that if one door closes, their supply must close with it. But this belief is the root of fear, because channels were never designed to be trusted as the source. They are only pathways, temporary instruments through which abundance moves. The moment you confuse the channel for the source, you give the channel power over your peace. God was never meant to be replaced by a paycheck, a person, or a position. God is the origin of all substance, the intelligence that creates form out of the unseen. And when you understand this, something inside you relaxes. You no longer panic when a job ends, when income slows, or when one opportunity disappears, because you recognize that the channel may change, but the source remains untouched, unlimited, and fully active. The same power that feeds the birds without warehouses, that clothes the flowers without factories, is fully capable of sustaining you, guiding you, and funding you through ways you cannot yet imagine. When you accept God as the true source, you stop begging life for permission to prosper. You stop shrinking your desires to match what seems reasonable. Divine supply does not respond to logic or past patterns. It responds to alignment. And alignment begins when you make a simple inner decision. I do not live by chance or circumstance. I live by divine provision. This decision alone shifts your entire relationship with money. Instead of chasing it, you expect it. Instead of fearing loss, you trust redirection. What looks like an ending becomes a rearrangement. What feels like rejection becomes protection. Because when God is your source, nothing real can be taken from you, only what no longer belongs. And what belongs to you by divine right will come, even if it must arrive through unfamiliar doors. Many people pray for money but secretly believe their supply depends on someone else's approval. That divided belief cancels results. You cannot claim God as your source while mentally fearing human limitation. Faith must be whole. When you place your trust fully in divine supply, you are not being passive. You are being powerful. You are acknowledging a higher law that overrides visible conditions. This law does not deny effort. It removes strain. You still act, but you act without panic. You still work, but you work without fear. You still plan, but you are not imprisoned by outcomes. There is a calm authority that enters your voice, your decisions, your presence, and people can feel it. Opportunities respond to it. Money responds to it. Because confidence rooted in God is magnetic. There are seasons when a channel dries up suddenly, and fear tries to convince you that you are unsafe. But divine intelligence often closes one door because you have outgrown it. God does not sustain limitation. God expands expression. When one stream stops, it is not punishment. It is promotion in disguise. The universe is not cruel. It is precise. If you trust the source, you will not cling to channels that are meant to end. You will release them with dignity, knowing that something greater is already forming. This is why those who truly trust divine supply move through life with resilience. They are not shaken by external shifts because their security is internal. Understand this deeply. Money is an effect, not a cause. It follows consciousness. When your consciousness rests in the truth of divine provision, money organizes itself around that truth. You do not need to manipulate circumstances or convince people. Your work is inner agreement. Your work is to refuse fear as a final authority. Your work is to speak truth calmly, even when appearances argue back. Saying, God is my unfailing source, is not a religious phrase. It is a declaration of law, and law must produce results. When you live from the source, generosity becomes natural, not forced. You stop hoarding because you trust replenishment. You stop competing because you know supply is not scarce. You stop envying because what belongs to you cannot miss you. This inner shift is what opens outer flow. God does not fund desperation, God funds trust. And trust is quiet, steady, and patient. It does not rush miracles, it allows them. So when you release your dependence on channels and anchor yourself in the source, you step into a higher economy, one not governed by fear, inflation, or uncertainty. You begin to see that provision is already woven into your path. Every right idea carries supply. Every inspired action opens doors. Every delay is working in your favor. And even when you cannot trace the path, you can rest in this certainty. The source never runs out, never forgets, never fails. When God is your source, supply is not a question. It is a promise already in motion. Expectation is not the same as hoping, and it is not the same as wishing. Hope leans forward with uncertainty, but expectation stands calmly in certainty. When you expect something, you prepare for it without anxiety. You make room for it without begging. This is the state in which divine provision moves fastest. The universe does not respond to desperation, it responds to assumption. Whatever you quietly assume to be true begins arranging itself around you. This is why expectation is so powerful. It is faith in its most relaxed form. When you expect good, you are not arguing with life. You are agreeing with divine law. You are saying, without strain, "This is normal for me." And what feels normal to you is what manifests most easily. Many people unknowingly block their own supply because they expect struggle. They say they believe in abundance, yet they brace for disappointment. That inner brace sends a mixed signal. Life mirrors that confusion. Expectation must be clean, it must be gentle but firm. You do not need to shout affirmations all day or force yourself into excitement. True expectation feels settled. It feels like knowing your name will be called because it is written on the list. When your mind reaches that state, provision begins moving before you see evidence. The invisible always moves first. Results are never sudden. They are only suddenly noticed. Expectation activates provision because it gives the unseen permission to become seen. God does not override your consciousness. Divine law cooperates with it. When you expect lack, you unknowingly command delay. When you expect ease, you command flow. This is not punishment or reward. It is alignment. You receive what you are internally prepared to receive. If you prepare for struggle, you receive effort. If you prepare for blessing, you receive grace. Preparation is mental long before it is physical. Your thoughts furnish the room your future must live in. Notice how naturally expectation works in everyday life. When you expect the sun to rise, you do not pray all night in fear. You sleep peacefully. That same peaceful certainty is what activates supply. Expectation removes urgency, and urgency is what blocks miracles. When you are urgent, you are telling the universe you do not trust timing. When you expect, you trust that everything is already scheduled in divine order. This trust creates emotional stability, and emotional stability allows inspired action. You begin to move differently, you speak differently, you decide differently. And these subtle shifts open doors that force could never open. Expectation also sharpens intuition. When you expect good, you notice guidance more clearly. You recognize ideas as answers instead of dismissing them as imagination. You take small steps without fear because you are not trying to make something happen. You are responding to what is unfolding. Divine provision often arrives disguised as an idea, a nudge, a sudden clarity. Those who expect miracles recognize them early. Those who doubt step over them unknowingly. There is a deep difference between wanting and expecting. Wanting keeps the desire in the future. Expecting brings it into the present emotionally. And the present is where creation happens. When you emotionally live as though supply is assured, you stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios. You stop preparing excuses. You stop explaining your lack to yourself and others. Instead, you hold a quiet confidence that something is resolving, something is opening, something is aligning. This confidence is not arrogance, it is spiritual understanding. Expectation does not mean you will never feel fear. It means fear will no longer lead. When doubt appears, you do not panic. You gently return to the assumption of good. You remind yourself that divine law does not miss appointments. You are not late to your own provision. What belongs to you moves toward you with accuracy. Your job is not to chase outcomes, but to maintain inner readiness. Readiness is faith without tension. As expectation deepens, gratitude becomes easier. You thank life in advance because you recognize patterns forming. You sense movement even before results show. This anticipatory gratitude accelerates manifestation because it confirms your trust. Gratitude says, I know this is handled. And what is handled does not need force. When you live in expectation, you stop living on emotional highs and lows. You become steady. Steadiness is powerful. It tells the universe you can be trusted with more. Sudden wealth rarely comes to unstable minds, but consistent provision flows naturally to those who expect it as a way of life. Expectation becomes your default setting, not a temporary mood. So allow expectation to become gentle, normal, and constant. Do not wait for proof. Proof follows belief. It does not create it. Stand in the quiet, knowing that provision is active now, not because you demanded it, but because you agreed with it. When you expect divine supply, you are not asking for a miracle. You are allowing a law to function. And once expectation is established, provision has no choice but to appear. Most people believe faith means holding tightly, thinking harder, repeating words louder, or trying to control outcomes with effort. But true faith works in the opposite direction. It releases. It loosens the grip. It allows. Resistance is subtle. It hides in worry, in constant checking, in overthinking how things will happen, in the need to see proof before peace. Allowing begins the moment you stop arguing with the present and stop interrogating the future. Divine intelligence does not require your tension to operate. In fact, tension interferes with it. When you worry, you are silently declaring that you must manage what God already governs. When you overthink, you are saying the universe needs your anxiety to function. Releasing resistance is not giving up. It is stepping out of the way of a power far more capable than fear. Fear does not block blessings because it is bad, but because it keeps the mind noisy. And a noisy mind cannot hear guidance. Divine direction is quiet. It arrives as a sense of ease, a sudden clarity, a calm nudge that feels natural rather than dramatic. When you are tense, you miss it. You look for answers in struggle instead of stillness. Allowing creates inner silence, and in that silence, solutions rise effortlessly. This is why miracles often happen when people stop forcing them, when they rest, when they surrender timing, when they finally say, I don't need to control this anymore. Control is resistance wearing a mask of responsibility. Releasing resistance also means releasing the demand to understand every step. The human mind wants a full map before it moves, but divine order works step by step. You are shown the next right move, not the entire journey. When you insist on seeing the whole path, you delay movement, allowing trusts that clarity will come as needed. It says, I will take this step, knowing the next will reveal itself. This trust activates flow. Flow cannot exist where there is rigidity. It requires openness, flexibility, and patience. Many people unknowingly resist their own good by clinging to old stories, stories of struggle, delay, disappointment, or past failure. These stories become familiar, and familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts. Allowing asks you to release identity tied to hardship. It asks you to imagine ease without guilt, success without apology, provision without explanation. That can feel uncomfortable at first. The nervous system has learned stress. Allowing retrains it to accept peace as normal. And when peace becomes normal, abundance follows naturally because abundance thrives in relaxed soil. Resistance also shows up as impatience. Wanting results immediately is not confidence. It is fear of waiting. Divine timing is precise, not slow. When you rush it, you add pressure to something that unfolds best organically. Allowing means you trust that what is aligning behind the scenes is just as important as what you can see. Seeds grow underground long before they break the surface. Digging them up to check progress only delays growth. Trust leaves the soil undisturbed. When you allow, you stop micromanaging outcomes. You stop attaching emotional survival to results. You act, but you do not cling. You speak intentions, but you do not obsess. You prepare, but you do not panic. This balanced state is where miracles feel ordinary. Things resolve without drama. Help arrives casually. Money comes through unexpected conversations. Doors open that you were not pushing on. This is not coincidence, it is alignment. Allowing does not mean passivity. It means inspired action instead of forced action. You still move, but movement feels guided rather than strained. You know when to act and when to pause. Resistance rushes, allowing waits without anxiety. Resistance pushes, allowing attracts. Resistance exhausts, allowing energizes. The body itself responds to this shift. Breathing deepens. Shoulders relax. Thoughts slow. And as the body calms, the mind becomes receptive. There is a deep humility in allowing. It admits that you do not have to carry everything alone. It trusts that life is intelligent, supportive, and responsive. This humility is strength, not weakness. It aligns you with a power that sees further than fear ever could. When you release resistance, you stop blocking the very help you have been asking for. So let go gently, not all at once, not perfectly, just enough to breathe. Just enough to say, this does not require my stress. Let peace replace urgency. Let trust replace control. Let openness replace expectation of struggle. When you do, you will notice something subtle but profound. Things begin to work out without effort. And you will realize that allowing was never about doing less. It was about trusting more. Gratitude is often misunderstood as something you practice after your desire arrives, as a polite response to a visible blessing. But in truth, gratitude is a state of recognition, not a reaction. It is the awareness that divine order is already at work, even when the evidence has not yet appeared. When gratitude rises before proof, it signals deep trust. It says, I understand the law and I know it is functioning now. This kind of gratitude is not emotional excitement, it is quiet confidence. It does not wait for circumstances to change in order to feel at peace. It creates peace first, and peace is fertile ground for manifestation. When you are grateful in advance, you shift from wanting to receiving. Wanting keeps you reaching. Gratitude allows you to open your hands. An open state attracts more because it communicates readiness. Life responds to the feeling of, this is already handled. Complaining, on the other hand, delays results because it reinforces the belief that something is wrong. Gratitude dissolves that belief. It gently removes resistance by replacing doubt with appreciation. Even a simple thank you spoken inwardly can shift the entire nervous system from tension to trust. And when the body relaxes, the mind aligns, and what you seek can move toward you without obstruction. Gratitude also rewires perception. You begin to notice support that was always present but previously overlooked. Small signs become confirmation. Subtle improvements become encouragement. Momentum builds quietly. This is how faith strengthens naturally, not through force, but through recognition. Each moment of gratitude affirms, I am supported, and the universe, hearing that agreement, continues to support. What you acknowledge grows. What you appreciate multiplies. There is a profound power in being thankful for what is unseen. It collapses time. It brings the future emotionally into the present. And since creation happens in the present, gratitude accelerates outcomes. You are no longer waiting, you are participating. This is why gratitude is often called the final seal of faith. It completes the inner circuit. Without it, intentions remain open-ended. With it, they lock into place. Gratitude also protects the mind from fear's return. Fear feeds on uncertainty. Gratitude feeds on trust. When gratitude becomes a habit, fear has no space to dominate. Challenges may still arise, but they no longer define your emotional state. You meet them with steadiness rather than panic. You remain anchored, knowing that everything is working together intelligently. This steadiness makes you a reliable receiver. Divine supply flows most easily to those who can remain grounded while receiving. Another quiet miracle of gratitude is that it removes desperation from desire. Desperation repels, appreciation attracts. When you are thankful now, you are no longer demanding outcomes for emotional survival. You are allowing them to arrive as natural extensions of alignment. This removes pressure from the process, and where there is no pressure, there is flow. Gratitude does not deny challenges. It places them in context. It says, "This is not the whole story." It acknowledges temporary conditions without giving them authority. In doing so, it keeps consciousness aligned with solution rather than problem. Solutions move faster when they are not resisted by complaint or doubt. As gratitude deepens, generosity follows effortlessly. You give freely of time, kindness, attention, resources, because you trust replenishment. And giving is a declaration of abundance. It says, "I live in overflow." Life reflects that belief faithfully. So let gratitude become less about words and more about posture. A posture of trust, a posture of recognition, a posture of quiet knowing. Thank life before it shows proof. Thank the unseen before it becomes seen. Not because you are pretending, but because you understand the law. And when gratitude seals your faith, manifestation has no loose ends. What you have thanked for must arrive, because gratitude declares it already belongs to you.